Welcome to our Tuesday night Torah class. I always try to start right on time, and I would hope that would encourage people that are coming to be here on time. All you people that are watching on the internet, that's okay. But I was thinking maybe what I need to do is raffle off a new car in the first 3 minutes. And so if you're not here, you don't get a chance to get the new car. But then I'd have to come up with a new car, so I probably won't do that. Let me open with a word of prayer. Father God, thank you for the evening. Thank you for this group of people that came out to look at your Torah. I'd ask that you just be in our discussions, be in our time together tonight. Help us to learn from one another. And I know that you want to reward those of us who diligently seek you, and that's what we're doing, God. We want to know you better. We want to know how you'd like us to behave. We just want to appreciate how wonderful and amazing you are and how much you love us. In Yahushua's name, amen. Okay, so I always like to review just a little bit last week. Oh, there's John. John has a question. He's got to get the microphone. It's right there on top of the thing. There you go. It's all, turn it on, it should work.
Spend a little bit of time and do any introductory questions?
Yes. I was going to do that. I wanted to wait for the other people to show up, but I hadn't forgotten that.
Okay.
Here we go. We got some people in here. Welcome. Find yourself anywhere is fine. We have, that's another good reason for coming is there's stuff to eat back there. So if you haven't had anything to eat, you can go help yourself. So we've been working ourselves through the Torah, and one of the advantages of doing what we do here on Tuesday night is that we're not following a particular schedule. We study some, and then at the end of an hour and a half, we quit, and we just pick up where we left off last week. So we don't have to cover a certain amount of material. We just basically do what we need to do during that hour and a half. And basically, I try to tell people this. My job is I'm not teaching here. I'm just guiding a discussion, trying to keep us from going too far down rabbit holes, although some rabbit holes are good, but also just keeping things on track. But with that in mind, one of the things that I really meant for this to happen, and the leadership supports this is supposed to be the place you can come to ask questions. If something's bothering you, if you don't understand something, and you don't really feel like Shabbat is a good time to ask the question, you can ask it now. And I don't mind doing that. As a matter of fact, I like doing that. So I thought I'd just start off. I'll try to do this consistently. I mean, I really like the Torah, and I'm glad to go through it, but it doesn't hurt to spend a few minutes at the beginning just seeing if anybody has any particular question that they'd like to ask. Just anything, maybe. Yes. Oh, okay, just a second. Wait, we got to get a microphone, though. That's a little cumbersome, but it's the way. That way the people online can listen. Oh, by the way, I should point out, disclaimer, I may not know an answer, but I can make a guess, and somebody around here probably will. Go for it.
One of the things I've been wondering, we're new, by the way.
That's great.
is there a list from the Torah of the laws that Torah compliant people can follow, because there's so many that we can't because there's no temple. So which ones actually apply? Is there it written out somewhere?
Well, that's a very good question. There probably is, but I don't recall ever having seen such a list. They aren't in a very specific order, as you've noticed. They're all over the place, and I know Mark points out sometimes that, a lot of them don't apply, for example, because we don't have slaves that we have to treat certain ways, and we don't live in Israel, there's no temple, so there's a whole bunch of things that would not apply to us today. And so those are rather obvious, but even with respect to the ones that are more obvious, I think the thing that you really need to kind of look at is the attitude behind the law. You know, what the law is there for is to help reinforce an attitude that God would like us to have, especially with the way we treat each other. You know, most of the stuff in the Torah has to do, I should say most, there's two big areas: how you treat your relationship with God and how you treat your relationship with others. And if you can kind of look and see what's the intent of the law, you're probably over halfway. That's at least a pretty good answer. Like I say, a specific list I'm not too sure of. Hi, guys. John, do you have something to say?
You
Oh,
do.
he's got a list.
Well, I have a follow-on.
Okay, good.
Go to this website called myhebrewbible.com.
Which, let's see, there's no conflict of interest here. That's John's website. myhebrewbible.com.
And then go to lists. And at the bottom it says mitzvot, which is just Hebrew for commandments.
That's the plural of commandments, yeah.
You'll see that.
The list. But I still think what I said was true. I mean, you know, there's, even though we don't have slaves, you can learn a lot from
Yeah. But if you
reading
just-
and studying and understanding why God had the laws he has for how you treat your slaves.
And then it has
We're spending some time just answering and answering
you had a
questions
follow-up.
of any nature, because I want to be able to do that. So if you guys have any questions you'd like to ask about anything, do so. Go ahead.
Okay, my follow-on question is, and I believe I got this from coming to Shabbat, but that our salvation comes through faith in Jesus Christ.
Yep,
Has nothing to do with these laws.
that's exactly right.
But we choose to follow these because that's what the early Christians and Jesus followed, and they're supposed to be to help us.
Oh, that's 90% of it. I would just add a couple of little things. The salvation we've gotten is a free gift, exactly as you said, from Yeshua, who willingly gave his life so that we could have our relationship with God restored. Then you have to ask yourself, so how are we supposed to respond to that? Well, one thing, I mean, he says all through there, he says, if you love me, you'll obey my laws. So we demonstrate our love of him and our love of what he's done for us by being obedient to his Torah. So that you do it out of love. I always tell people Torah is not a have to, it's a get to. So you do it because you want to. As a matter of fact, he's not particularly excited if you do stuff begrudgingly. You know, he wants you to do it because you want to do it.
Since I still have the microphone, they were talking about the law and commandments, you know, and they'll say that a lot. Commandments definitely are the 10 Commandments. And then the law is everything else.
Yeah, it's hard to say because those words have been taken from different Hebrew words, and I'm not the Hebrew expert, but there are kind of different ones. But it even gets simpler than that, and let me explain it for a minute, then you can decide whether you like this or not. You know, when Yeshua was teaching, someone asked him, "What do I have to do to be saved?" And he says, "Well, you have to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." And then he says, the entire Torah is based on these two. Okay, so when you think about it, what that means is the whole 10 Commandments ought to be based on those two. And when you think about the 10 Commandments, they are. The first 5 have to do with your love of God, and the second 5 have to do with your love of how you treat your neighbor. And then all the ones that break down from there do. So they're really, it's really I hate to use the word concept, but it's more of a question of an overall viewpoint and attitude than it is individual, although those are important. You see what I mean? Now, he also said, you've, what is it, something about you tithe the mint and cumin and you ignore the something else. So he says, don't spend all your time worrying about whether or not you're doing this little thing over here if you're out mistreating, grossly mistreating your neighbor. So, but he wants you to use your head. So, I don't know.
He gave us brains to use, right?
That's right. Mark, I would expect somebody to have something to say with those.
Good job on that, my Hebrew Bible stuff. That was good. So now that we're saved, we talked about this a little bit on Shabbat. Now that we're saved, like Yeshua says, if you love me, keep my commandments. So every government, the covenant, you got New Testament and Old Testament. They really are New Covenant, Old Covenant, but really it's all one covenant. Just a misunderstanding on this word new. It's really not new, it's renewed. Kind of like the Constitution. All they're doing is a amendment. The whole Constitution isn't wiped out because they made an amendment. There's something that's been amended. It's still the same Constitution, okay? So now God has a government, and we are kingdom citizens in the government. And there's no covenant, there's no contract that anyone would give unless you had stipulations on what that covenant should look like. What are you saying that you'll do? Same thing with marriage. Back in the covenant marriage, when Abraham told Eleazar to go get a wife for his son, Isaac, he presented terms of the agreement. This is what he'll do for you, and this is what you'll do for him. So it's the same concept. And so we have terms of the covenant that we are to do now that we're into the kingdom. And of course, there's things he said he will do. He said, if we obey, we'll get all of these blessings. That's the terms that he says he'll do if we adhere to our part of the covenant. So it's really what it is. It's like a contract, which it is all legal, and we have each of us, both sides of the party, the bridegroom and the bride, have stipulations that are expected to keep that agreement intact. The cool thing about the law or the Torah is it's there to help us maintain a status of holiness. God's holy, he should be treated as holy, and his bride is to be holy. So that's what it's for. It's like a fence to help us keep from, completely going off the cliff. So that's really what it is.
The word Torah, really, that's okay. I was just going to say it means it's teaching and instruction, and kind of refers to a bullseye. It's the goal.
Okay, so one of the questions I had while I was studying was the statement that when they liken the law and the covenant to the marriage, and they say that when the man dies, that the woman is no longer under that covenant anymore, and she is allowed to remarry without being called an adulteress. And so it was like they were saying that when Jesus died, that we were no longer under that covenant. I'm just curious how to resolve that.
So it's that you're close to having that right, and here's where it's off the track a little bit, and that is when Yeshua or Jesus came, it's not the law that was done away with. It was a precept of the law, which was the divorce certificate. That is done away with, not the law, the precept. Because remember, what was nailed to the cross? It says sin and death. These are the two things that had to do with the divorce. The sin got the divorce, and the result of the divorce is death, because eternal separation from God is literally death. And so now we're able to come back in through the blood of Yeshua because we're able to be brought back in. So it's not the law. So when one of the things our Christian brothers have misunderstood about the New Testament is it makes it seem as though the woman can't marry if she's divorced, and that's not true. What was being dealt with in the New Testament was men were sending their wives away without a divorce, and when a woman goes away from the house and is sent away, a man approaches her, and the first thing he's going to ask her is, are you a virgin? Because if she's not, there's a problem. You see what I'm saying? So if she says no, he says, okay, show me your divorce certificate. If she doesn't have a divorce certificate, he can't touch her. He turns away and walks away, because if he does, that's adultery. You're either married or you have a divorce certificate. So because they were being sent away without one, men were subjecting them to abandonment for the rest of their life, and it was not right. And so this is why if a woman is divorced and she goes and takes another husband, that first man cannot take her. When he dies, he nullifies the divorce certificate, not the law. The law of the divorce is nullified so that she can come back to him. And that's what Messiah did for us.
Does anybody else have any questions of any kind? Go for it. Oh, you're going to run the mic. Do you want to ask a question? You don't have a question. Okay. What we're doing is we're just seeing if anybody has any question they'd like to ask. I would like to do this as we start every time, because maybe somebody's got some questions. Don't mention it. Actually it's good for us too, because especially some of us that think we know it all, you don't really know whether you know it or not until you try to explain it to somebody. All right, we'll go back, we'll return to the book of Numbers. Now, we started Numbers last week, and I went through a little talk about how they got their name and how the English name for the books is derived from, the important events in the books, or the most apparent characteristic of the book. So the most apparent characteristic of the book is Numbers, which is really cool because I'm a mathematician and I like numbers. But anyway, last week we spent all our time looking at how many members there were of the different tribes. You remember all that? And let's see, I made a slide or two. This was the different tribes, and these were the number of men. Let's see, the men, do you remember the ages? Who they counted, I should say, when they took this census? The number of males aged 20 and up who were fit for military duty, fit for being in the army. And so that's how many men there were above 20 and up in each of those tribes. And we went through the tribes here, and we talked about how you notice there is no tribe of Joseph, but there is the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh, because before Jacob died, he took his most beloved son Joseph, and he took Joseph's sons, his grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and put them in place of Joseph, and actually gave them the firstborn status. And then we also noticed that Levi's not on there too. So anyway, we went through and counted all that, and it was boring, but we found some stuff that was worth talking about. This was last week. The other thing we did is we saw how they camped out. This is the way they set up camp whenever they were, right? By the way, the Hebrew name for this book is what? Bamidbar. Bamidbar. And does anybody know what Bamidbar means? Yes, Mike.
In the wilderness.
In the wilderness, or in the desert, yeah. So this is all occurring at the foot of Mount Sinai. And they've just finished building the tabernacle, and they've set the tabernacle up, and that's what that's supposed to look like, I think. Yeah, I got a little thing here. Here's the actual tabernacle. My battery's running down. And then the tribes were to camp out in the various different locations here. Whenever they would set up the tabernacle, it always faced east. And the tribes in the east were Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The tribes in the south were Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. And the tribes in the west were Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. And the tribes on the north were Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. Now, it's easy enough to remember. I can't remember them all, but I don't have any trouble remembering the ones on the west, because the ones on the west were essentially the sons of Jacob by Rachel. Rachel only had 2 sons, right? She had Joseph, and then she died giving birth to Benjamin. So, and then Joseph, if you will, became Ephraim and Manasseh. So Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin are the 3 sons of Rachel. And then the rest of them are each of the handmaidens had 2 sons, and then Leah herself had 6. So that's where the rest of them come from. The Levites aren't on there. We're talking about the Levites tonight. Any questions about that? According to the map here, the Levites sat in an area just surrounding the tabernacle. The Levites, let's see, do you remember some of the discussion we had about well, let's see, we'll go back and kind of look at that. They're there, yeah, but they're just, you're right. The Levites are in a different position. They're the ones that are just nearest to the tabernacle. They're, if you will, it's fitting with what their role is. Their role is to serve as the intermediary between God and the Israelites, okay? And so the Israelites, as you can see, live outside, and God dwells in the tabernacle. So the Levites took up the space between where God lived and where the rest of the Israelites lived. So that was their job, was to be the intermediary. All right, let's see. I think we started on the Levites, but I don't know how far we got. But if I remember right, we kind of ended up, let's see. Did we start in chapter 3? Did we start on chapter 3? I'm going to read some of chapter 3. I know you guys. I'll read some of chapter 3. If it's a rehash, it's a rehash. So bear with me. Beg your pardon? 4. Well, okay, I'll try to hurry then. Because I just wanted to make sure we got the points right on this substitution thing. Starting in verse 1, this is the account of the family of Aaron and Moses at the time that Yahweh talked with Moses on Mount Sinai. Okay? What tribe were Aaron and Moses from? Levi, right? Aaron and Moses were Levites. So, starting in verse 2 then, the names of the sons of Aaron were Nadab the firstborn, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Those were the names of Aaron's sons, the anointed priests who were ordained to serve as priests. Nadab and Abihu, however, fell dead before Yahweh when they made an offering of unauthorized fire before him in the desert of Sinai. They had no sons, only Eleazar and Ithamar served as priests during the lifetime of their father Aaron. Okay, can anybody tell me about what that's referring to, the event that he's talking about there? Remember, beg your pardon? The strange fire. It's just after God came down and inhabited the tabernacle, and Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's eldest 2 sons, got kind of excited about things and decided they'd go in and get a little creative and approach God. And one of the things, if Leviticus teaches us nothing else, it teaches us that you don't approach God in any way other than the way he says to. And they did it on their own, at their own initiative, and they probably weren't in a state of ceremonial cleanness, and so they got zapped, if you will. They died. And so now Aaron only has the 2 remaining sons, Ithamar and Eleazar. Brings up another point. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Verse 5, God said to Moses, "Bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron the priest to assist him. They are to perform duties for him for the whole community at the tent of meeting by doing all the work of the tabernacle. They are to take care of all the furnishings of the tent of meeting, fulfilling the obligations of the Israelites by doing work of the tabernacle. Give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are the Israelites who are to be given wholly to him. Appoint Aaron and his sons to serve as priests. Anyone else who approaches the sanctuary must be put to death." Okay, so I want to make sure these other 12 tribes around the outside of the tent there, around the outside of the tabernacle, they all were eventually going to receive inheritances of land in the promised land, right? Levi would not. Levi didn't receive an inheritance of land. He said, God says here, we'll read it a little while, I am their inheritance. God says, I am their inheritance. So the Levites are special. They don't have a tribal land. They are spread throughout all the Israelites. And it's important to keep in mind there are two things, and you'll even see them in the Bible most of the time. There's the priests and the Levites. The priests and the Levites, those are not the same thing. Although the priests are Levites, the Levites are much more numerous than just the priests. What do you have to do to be a priest? What's the qualifier to be a priest? You have to be a son of Aaron. Yeah, Aaron only. You have to be descended from Aaron. If you're a son of Aaron, then you can be in the priesthood. If you're not, you're just plain old Levite. Now, what's the difference? What do the plain old Levites do? The short answer is they do everything the priests tell them to. They do everything Aaron and his sons tell them to. The long answer is they take care of all of the tabernacle. They're the guys responsible for setting it up and taking it down and making sure everything works. And they do everything other than actually go inside and meet with God and stuff like that. Does that you remember that? I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So I'm sorry if this is repetitious, but I think it's important. You got a question? Polly's got a question.
I had this question last week for you.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts that there are still sons of Aaron that live today?
I think there are definitely sons of Aaron that live today. But I
That
don't
are-
know that we can find them. I don't know that they know. But go ahead.
I just wanted your thoughts. If they are
Yeah.
living today, there's somewhere a lineage of Aaron that is in existence doing something somewhere today.
Well, they had lost track of this even at the time of Yeshua, because you can make a strong argument for the fact that John the Baptist was the last known legitimate Aaronic priest. And so they'd lost it by then, because John the Baptist wasn't recognized as such. John the Baptist was some nutcase out eating locusts and honey, But so they'd lost it.
Okay, second question is, what are your thoughts about Moses' son?
Oh.
Why don't you, just a thought.
Yeah.
I wonder, why don't we ever hear about what happened to Moses' son that was circumcised by his wife in the
Yep.
wilderness?
That's an excellent question. I don't know. It's been my observation from reading these stories that God is obviously very economical with his use of words. And if they're important, they show up again. So I think the importance of Moses' two sons was in that one little episode where you hear about that circumcision thing way back in Exodus. And evidently, we're supposed to get the importance of them from that, because they're never mentioned again. So I don't know what happened to them. Do you have some thoughts? Or okay, yeah.
So while we were in Israel, the Temple Institute has quite a few Levite priests already set up and established. Aaron's descendants have because of the new DNA thing, they have a specific marker.
Yep.
And so they're different than the rest of the Levites. So they're able to identify them through this gene or this DNA marker. And so they've got quite a few. As a matter of fact, I mentioned this a few weeks back, the lights, the Festival of Lights. Last Hanukkah, they took the Levite priests that they had and they performed a mock altar dedication of the altar that they've now formed and put together. So they dedicated that altar on Hanukkah this last year.
Okay.
And they had the legitimate priests that have the DNA markers performing the duties. They were wearing all the garments that they've already made, all the censers already made, everything was done.
Okay. I had forgotten, but I had also read or heard that they had discovered these genetic markers. I didn't know they were for the priesthood. I thought they were for Levites, but it doesn't matter. The thing is there's every reason to believe that, it makes me kind of want to go get my DNA tested, see if I'm one, huh? John?
I don't know how accurate it is, but there's a lot of Jewish people named Cohen.
Yep. There's a lot of them. There's a fair number of Levi, too, and Lewis is a derivative of Levi. So, who knows? It's funny, I went to college with a guy named Cohen who wasn't even Jewish. So, things have gotten muddled up in the succeeding 4,000 years. Okay, let me read the other thing, because the next thing is this is what I really wanted to get at. Starting in verse 11. Yahweh said to Moses, I have taken Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. The Levites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine. When I struck down all the firstborn in Egypt, I set apart for myself every firstborn in Israel, whether man or animal, and they are to be mine. I am Yahweh. So there's a lot that goes on in that sentence. He says, first of all, I have taken the Levites from among the Israelites in place of the first male offspring of every Israelite woman. So, he goes on to say, the first male offspring of every Israelite woman, that son, belongs to God. He says, that son is mine. And he says that he did this when he went through Egypt on the night of Passover and struck down all the firstborn of every family in Egypt, except those that had the blood on the doorposts, right? And of course, the ones that had the blood on the doorposts are the Israelites, or whatever believing Egyptians there were at the time. So, in order to make this fair, he says, I'm going to take the firstborn of everyone. I'm not taking just the firstborn of the Egyptians to kill them. I'm taking the firstborn son of everyone in all of Egypt. And if they have the blood over the doorposts, then I'll pass over them. But I have taken them, and I have counted for them, and they are mine. And what he says in this paragraph here, he says, I'm taking the Levites in place of the firstborn of all the rest of the tribes of Israel. So the Levites are now mine. Now, do you get that? I think that's pretty cool. John. The thing that's interesting is in a few minutes here, he actually makes the accounting.
So you have an option. You can be sacrificed, or you can do the substitute, right? Not
Yep.
all the Egyptians, I assume, not all the Egyptian firstborn didn't die because they followed the law. They followed the instructions.
I'm sure there were some Egyptians that, having gone through those 10 plagues, says, let me have some of that blood so that I can put it on my doorpost because I'm with you.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to hang out over your house
Yeah,
tonight.
that's right. I want to hang out at your house tonight, yeah. Yep.
Well, it applies even to Moses. You know, the firstborn son of Moses was brought up, and before that, it says God came to kill him. Now, I don't think it's Moses, but it's the Gershom.
Yeah.
I'm here to take him as my firstborn.
Yeah.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
So they got in a little bit of a tizzy about that, but eventually they did the circumcision, they followed the instructions, and the substitute did the trick.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Anyway, I just think it's fascinating. You see, and the other thing this does to us is it gives us this idea of redemption. Basically, God he owns the firstborn male of every Israelite family. But he doesn't really want those. He wants the Levites, because the Levites are going to be the ones that are his to do his job. So he's basically redeeming. He's allowing the Levites to redeem the firstborn of all the other Israelites.
So technically, each one of us belong to a tribe. We just don't know which tribe.
Technically.
Yes. And so how does this apply to us today with the firstborn?
That's a great question, and I'll tell you what I think, and you can tell me what you think too. God has always had a high regard for adoption. He says he says, and a good place to look at that is I think it's Isaiah chapter 62, where he talks about if those that have been adopted, those that want to be adopted into the family, he says, I even love them, I think more highly of them than I do my own kids, because they've made this choice on their own. And it's very simple. It's what Ruth said to Naomi. She says, I want your people to be my people, and I want your God to be my God, and I'll go where you go. Ruth was smart enough to realize that Naomi's God was the God, and she wanted to be adopted in. God has always honored that, and he respects that greatly. And so the bottom line is it doesn't matter. So it would be really nice to know what tribe I'm from and all of this, but at this point, it doesn't matter because we can be in by adoption, which is at least as valid. Does that make sense? Yeah, and makes me happy because, well, a lot of people get off on rabbit trails trying to figure out which tribe they're from, and quite honestly, it's probably not even possible at this point. It's been too long.
Is the first son still belong to
Yep, well,
Yahweh?
as a general principle, yes. Now, we can talk about this firstborn son thing because part of the law that we've looked at is the firstborn son does belong to God, and if you don't intend to give him to God, then you must redeem him. Now, the redemption price for the firstborn son is not very high. I think it's 5 shekels. But you have to do it. If you don't do it, then he belongs to God. Now, there are some that they didn't do that. You can name some of them, I bet. Samuel was dedicated to God and was never redeemed. Oh, there's others. I don't know, but there's several others I haven't written down somewhere in here. We'll look at them. But in general, the firstborn son belongs to God. Who? Samson. There's another one. Okay. Yes.
Well, that's definitely a question that I had a lot of the time. Like, that's something that I think a lot of people think about when they start talking about the different houses of Israel and how we're all, grafted into Israel. We're like, well, what part of it then? Mm-hmm. And I think God explains it pretty well when he says that he's going to make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And it really has nothing to do with the tribes at that point, but it has to do with the houses. Mm-hmm. And even Yeshua came and he said, I've come only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, saying that he has come for the lost tribes. He didn't say each tribe. There's very few times in the New Testament where it talks about the individual tribes. And like in Revelation, it talks about the 144,000, 12,000 from each tribe and stuff like that. But that's only something God knows. Yeah, we really can't know that. But what we can know is that we are grafted into Israel, and it's the house of Israel, unless we're a Jewish person, which a lot of us aren't, not really born Jewish. Your mother has to be Jewish, and then therefore you are Jewish. And so we wouldn't even know that in the first place if we weren't Jewish. But all the other tribes fall under the house of Israel.
That's right. That's right. And like I really want to point out the fact that God, if you've accepted the covenant, if you've believed what Yeshua did, nullified the divorce when he divorced the northern kingdom, then you're good. And whether you can trace your tribe back to, Ephraim or Dan or Naphtali, it doesn't matter because you're in. The same thing applied for the Egyptians that came along with the Israelites when they came out of Egypt. I mean, we had this discussion before. What tribe were these Egyptians associated with? And we talked about how, well, the chances are they were friends with some of these Israelites, or else they wouldn't be going along. And so they were adopted in de facto to some tribe that they just were friends with. So I don't think I don't think God is a real nitpicker with respect to exactly your lineage. My opinion. Yes?
So the firstborn belongs to God still?
The firstborn got what?
Belongs to God.
Yes.
Still?
Well, yes. But you can, yes, I think so.
Is it firstborn in the spirit or firstborn in
Well, I don't know. This is talking about the flesh.
the flesh?
This is talking about the flesh. But you make a good point, and I'm not sure.
Oh, so.
Yeah. These are hard questions. By the way, it's not too hard to stump me.
I just have a question.
Sure.
I didn't understand what he said. The house of Israel and the house of Judah, when the Bible refers to that, is still talking about the 10 tribes. The house of Israel is and Judah being the 2 tribes, and the house of Israel being the other 10 tribes, right? It's not like a house.
No, whenever the Assyrian kingdom, the Assyrians, came down on the northern kingdom and blew them out of the water and took them off to all 4 corners of their empire, that was the northern 10 tribes.
There's still a house of Israel, meaning they're
Put the micro.
They are the son of Israel.
Those are
Or
that's the
Jacob.
house of Israel. They commonly called that the house of Israel. They called it the kingdom of Israel, in contrast to the kingdom of Judah, which was down in the south. And by the way, had Benjamin in it.
They had 2 sons.
Yeah, yeah. Benjamin had the land. The city of Jerusalem is not in Judah. Honestly, it's in Benjamin. It's in the territory that was associated with Benjamin. Yeah.
So I would argue that the firstborn is born in the Spirit, because we just read it. Why is Levi replaced instead of the actual firstborn? Because they were more zealous about honoring his covenant. And so spiritually, and I know that can be a vague, abstract word, but they acted like the firstborn. They took...
That's fine. I'll buy that.
Okay.
I'll buy that. There's not, in other words, what you're saying, there's not a thing wrong with thinking that the firstborn spiritually belongs to God. That even makes sense. Yeah.
Let me think about, so a man could have multiple firstborn children because it's the firstborn who opens the womb.
Now, I knew we were going to get there. Because, is it what you're saying, is it that daughters don't count?
Well, we just had that little sidebar discussion right here. This word firstborn, he can talk about that it refers to birthright, and which is only given to a male.
Okay.
A woman never, I guess, had the birthright.
Yeah.
But it's not the firstborn of a man, because a man does, it says that the firstborn that opens the womb.
But it's pretty clear about being a male, too.
Right, so it is a firstborn. So let's say a daughter opens the womb and a son is born second, then that would not be considered a firstborn that opened the womb.
Well, I think it is, but I don't know. That's just my guess. Let's consider, we're way off in the weeds here, but just for a minute, Zelophehad's daughters. Do you remember Zelophehad's daughters? Zelophehad was this guy, this member of some tribe of Israel, who didn't have any sons. All he had was daughters. And by virtue of that, his land holding was going to disappear after he died. And he went to Moses and he said, what's the deal? I don't think it's fair that I should lose all my land holding just because I only had daughters. And Moses went off and talked to God, and they came back with this ruling that says, if Zelophehad's daughters will marry within the tribe, then the land holding then stays in the family, if you will. And so that was the way that worked. Do you remember that? I don't know. Like I say, it's not hard to stump me. You got another one? Okay, good.
So I remember hearing that it was written in the Bible, and I was just looking for the reference, and I couldn't find it, that said that that the people from the lost tribes, or the 10 tribes, the Ephraim tribes, would be able to choose which tribe they could be. I couldn't find the reference, but the New Jerusalem has 12 gates, and each of them has the name of, it's laid out just like what we see up there.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if there's just going to be a knowing,
Yeah.
a sense of which tribe we belong to, or even could that have to do with the new name he gives us?
Absolutely. Those are both fair answers as far as I'm concerned. Like I say, I don't, see, how can I put it? All of this is important because it teaches us about God, but it really always ends up boiling down to your own individual relationship. And I'm sure he'll tell us where he wants us to go. At least I'm counting on it. John.
So whatever key to whatever gate your St. Pete gives you is the one you probably associate
Yeah,
with.
yeah, there you go. So I don't know which one I want, really. Okay. You want to go on? I wanted to get the point across, the fact that the Levites have taken the place, all Levite males have taken the place of every firstborn Israelite male. So that basically implies that there ought to be the same number, right? And I know it's here because I read it earlier this afternoon, but I can't find it yet, so we'll go on. I'm going to be in verse 14 for just a minute here, chapter 3:14. Yahweh said to Moses in the desert of Sinai, "Count the Levites by their families and clans. Count every male a month old or more." So Moses counted them, and as he was commanded by the word of Yahweh. And these were the names of the sons of Levi. Now, way back, the son of Jacob, one of the sons of Jacob was Levi, and Levi had three sons, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Okay, and then it goes on and says, these are the names of the Gershonite clans, Libni and Shimei. These are the Kohathite clans, Amram, Itzhar, Hebron, and Uziel. Does the name Amram ring any bells with you? Do you know who Amram is? Amram was Moses' father. It was Moses and Aaron's and Miriam's father was Amram. So that, sure enough, Moses and Aaron then are of the tribe of Levi and of the clan of Kohath, which is important. And then the third son of Levi was Merari, and the Merarite clans are Mahi and Mushi. These were the Levite clans. And then it goes on and talks about to what happens to them. And I'm going to just read this and we'll kind of discuss. It's kind of interesting. To Gershon belonged the clans of the Libnites and the Shimeites. These were the Gershonite clans. The number of all the males a month old or more who were counted was 7,500. The Gershonite clans were to camp on the west. Behind the tabernacle, the leader of the families of the Gershonites was Eliasaph, son of Lael. At the tent of meeting, the Gershonites were responsible for the care of the tabernacle and the tent, its coverings, the curtain of the entrance to the tent of meeting, the curtains of the courtyard, the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle and the altar, and the ropes and everything related to their use. Okay? So the Gershonites, as you can see, are over here in the back, the west side. My thing doesn't work anymore. The Gershonites are over on the west of the tent of meeting. And what part of the tabernacle were they responsible for? The software. We used to, in New Zealand, we call it the Manchester. There was the tents, the coverings, the curtains, the ropes, all the soft stuff. That's what it says here. It says the leaders, so-and-so. At the tent of meeting, the Gershonites were responsible for the care of the tabernacle and tent, its coverings, the curtain at the entrance to the tent of meeting, the curtains at the courtyard, and the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle, the altar, and the ropes, everything related to their use. So the Gershonites carried all the soft stuff. The Manchester was bed linens. Anyway, Mark.
I don't know why I didn't pay attention to it before, but because we're talking about identity and we've been focusing on Ephraim and Manasseh, so the Levites on their side were responsible for the tabernacle and the altar.
Well,
That's what it says.
yeah, it says altar. That's right.
They're
But
responsible for the temple, the tabernacle, and the altar.
Well,
That's pretty interesting.
Before you talk about the altar, you ought to wait till we read the rest of it, because I'm not sure, let's see, where it said the altar, it said the leader, okay. The care of the tabernacle and the tent, its coverings, care of the tabernacle and its coverings. Oh, it says the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle and altar. I'm not sure that word altar is not used. So I think that it's the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle and altar. I don't think it's the tabernacle and altar.
Well, this would be the altar that's out in the courtyard.
Well, okay, you may be right, but I think when we get down here, let's read the next one and we'll see. Okay? The next one is starting in verse 27. To Kohath belonged the clans of the Amorites, the Izharites, the Hebronites, and the Uzzielites. These were the Kohathite clans. The number of all the males a month old or more was 8,600. The Kohathites were responsible for the care of the sanctuary. The Kohathite clans were to camp on the south side of the tabernacle, as you can see there. The leader of the families of the Kohathite clans was Elizaphan, son of Uzziel. They were responsible for the care of the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, the articles of the sanctuary used in ministering, the curtain, and everything related to their use. The chief leader of the Levites was Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest. He was appointed over those who were responsible for the care of the sanctuary. So the Kohathites were the ones that are responsible for the furnishings, right? The ark and the table of showbread, the menorah, all that stuff, they were responsible for carrying it, for taking care of it, for moving it. Now we're going to find out that it gets even more tight in that the Kohathites, let's see, every priest was a Kohathite, but not all the Kohathites were priests. So there were Kohathites that couldn't be involved in actually going inside the tabernacle and ministering because they weren't sons of Aaron. Okay? But anyway, that's Kohath then had the important stuff, the Kohathites. Let me read one more here. Verse 33. To Merari, that's the third clan of the Levites, belonged the clans of the Mahalites, the Mushites, and these were the Merarite clans. The number of the males a month old or more who were counted was 6,200. The leader of the families of the Merarites was Zuriel, the son of Abihail. They were to camp on the north side of the tabernacle. The Merarites were appointed to take care of the frames of the tabernacle, its crossbars, its posts, its bases, all its equipment, and everything related to their use, as well as the posts of the surrounding courtyard with their bases and tent pegs and ropes. In other words, they were the hardware guys. They were the ones that had to carry all the rods and posts that held up the curtains and all the big planks that went on the side and all that kind of stuff. So you can see that the division of labor was very, very precise. So I will get to this part that I wanted to get part in just a minute, and we'll quit. But, well, we won't quit. We'll go on. Verse 38. Moses and Aaron and his sons were to camp to the east of the tabernacle toward the sunrise in front of the tent of meeting. They were responsible for the care of the sanctuary on behalf of the Israelites. Anyone else who approached the sanctuary was to be put to death. So Moses, Aaron, and his sons camped right in front of the tabernacle. Okay, so they were just outside the gray square, the gray rectangle there represents, the black line that is surrounding that gray rectangle is this, 7-foot high white tent or white fence that goes all around the thing. And the door that gets into the tabernacle area was where Moses, Aaron, and his sons camped. So the total number of Levites counted at Yahweh's command by Moses and Aaron, according to their clans, every male a month old or more was 22,000. So those are 22,000 Levites. All the people that camped inside that dotted line numbered 22,000. Okay, this is the part I wanted to get to. Well, yes. Verse 40. Yahweh said to Moses, count all the firstborn Israelite males who are a month old or more and make a list of their names. Take the Levites for me in place of all the firstborn of Israelites, and the livestock of the Levites in place of all the firstborn of the livestock of the Israelites. I am Yahweh. So here's where he's actually doing this redemption thing. He's trading. He says, count all the firstborn of all the Israelites, and count all the Levites, and let's see what the two numbers look like. So verse 42 says, Moses counted all the firstborn of the Israelites, as Yahweh had commanded him. The total number of the firstborn males, a month old or more, listed by name, was 22,273. Okay, now, how many Levites were there? 22,000. So there's a difference of 273 here. There are 273 more firstborn Levite or Israelites than there were Levites. Oh, we got some questions over here. See, this is just a big math puzzle. I used to like story problems in math too.
So we should all be asking the question, how can one tribe have 273 or 200 have within 273 firstborn males than all the other 10 tribes?
Nope, that's not what we're saying. We're saying 22,273 firstborn males in all the Israelites. That equals the whole Levite male tribes.
Okay.
So it's not firstborn Levites, it's all of them.
So you're saying the tribe of Levi had
22,220, it says right here, 22,000. It's in verse
so the difference
39.
is the 273 that's amongst the Levites.
No, they're amongst the Israelites.
Amongst the Israelites, okay.
There are 273 more firstborn males than there are number of males in Levi. That's what it says. I find this interesting mainly because of this next paragraph. Verse 40. Oh, I'm sorry, John. Go for it. I apologize.
So the Gershonites, they told their number was 6,800, or was that the Merarites?
The Gershonites were 7,500.
70?
Yeah, that's
7,500?
Yep, 7,500.
And then the Merarites were
6,200.
6,200.
And the Kohathites were 8,600.
Oh, it does say it there. Never mind.
Yeah, well, I have a
mind.
problem with this number, but we'll talk about that number in a minute. Yes.
Can you go back to that map of yours? How large do you think that area is, the dotted line? Because 22,000 people living in a space, that's quite a few folks.
Yeah, that is quite a few folks. That, I'm just guessing, but I doubt that it's more than a square mile.
Yeah.
No.
And then everybody else lived out and away from that.
Yeah.
So they might have been, I mean, we're talking a couple million people. They probably had to be spread out quite a bit.
Yeah. It was, let's see, the Phoenix Valley is what, 4 million so on, something like that, 4 million people. And we live pretty spread out. They probably didn't live as spread out as we do here. So it would be less than the Phoenix Valley. Big space though. The numbers are a little frightening to me.
Well, when they found that people now believe that the Mount Sinai was in the Arabian Peninsula.
Yep.
The area, they say, from what I've read, is much larger than what like the traditional site is in
Mount Sinai, or in Sinai Peninsula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess it would be suitable for a large number of people.
Well, I remember, I've not, of course, been to the Arabian Peninsula, but I've been over to Kadesh Barnea, which is one of the places where these guys camp. And man, there's room for several million people there, I'm here to tell you. Yeah.
I was noticing here that the counts are males from a month old and upward. Mm-hmm. My assumption would be that all the people inside the dotted line are the people that are doing the work. I mean, they're tasked to guard and to carry and all that stuff. So you wouldn't have month-old.
Nope.
Some of those would not be in there.
That's right. You're exactly right, for sure. The reason for counting them a month old was because they're the firstborn male. But we'll get there in a little while where it talks about the work. The Levites' career lasted from, I believe it's age 30 to 50. So, and they counted those guys too. So, there's whenever a Levite grew up, I guess he, through adolescence, he at some point past adolescence, I don't know, maybe sometime in his 20s, he began an apprenticeship. And then when he was 30, he had his job. And I'm telling you, this is fun to think about because he had one job. I mean, he might have been silver pallet, silver post holder, socket number 42 that goes right there, whenever you set this thing up. And that was his job for the next 20 years, to pick that up, carry it where it needed to go, and put it back down so that all the rest of the stuff fit around it. And they couldn't change jobs. And they did that from age 30 to 50. Now, whenever they were 50, they retired. They didn't quit. They would help around there, but their responsibility was not that. They had, less well-defined responsibilities associated with the fact that they were older.
Were they like Walmart greeters?
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
I think I finally figured out what my question was. So the two numberings are, the 22,000 is of the Levites is all males, not just firstborn, all males that are a month older or older. But the rest of the tribes, it's just firstborn.
Yes, yes.
So it's all males versus firstborn is what's being numbered. And that's
Yes.
why they're fairly equal, because they're counting every male in the Levites, whereas only the firstborn amongst the rest of the Israel.
That's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right. But I think this is fascinating that they've got this kind of detail in here.
Just a bit of trivia.
Okay,
The metropolitan area of Phoenix, a few years ago, it was 60 miles by 90 miles.
yeah,
And that was less than 4 million back then. So
back then. So the whole area here, not the dotted lines, but the line that doesn't exist, the whole screen would be something along those lines. Yeah. Okay, let me get to this last little thing here, because I wanted to do this. I don't know why this fascinates me. Verse 44. He says, "Then Yahweh also said to Moses, take the Levites in place of all the firstborn of Israel, and the livestock of the Levites in place of their livestock. The Levites are to be mine, I am Yahweh, to redeem the 273 firstborn Israelites who exceed the number of Levites. Collect 5 shekels for each one, according to the sanctuary shekel, which weighs 20 gerahs, and give the money for the redemption of the additional Levites to Aaron and his sons." So even those 273 got accounted for. And it said right here, they got 1,365 shekels for them. So those 273 excess firstborn Israelites were redeemed at 5 shekels apiece, so that it's now, the sums add up. You'd appreciate that, huh, Marvin? The sums add up here, because now the firstborn of all the Israelites, plus the ones that were redeemed, equals the firstborn, or equals all the males in Levite. I think that's great. God really had this figured out. Moses collected the redemption money. I'm verse 49. Moses collected the redemption money from those who exceeded the number of redeemed by the Levites. From the firstborn of the Israelites, he collected silver weighing 1,365 shekels. According to the sanctuary shekel, Moses gave the redemption money to Aaron and his sons as he was commanded. So, I was excited about that. Are there any thoughts about that, or you want to move on? It does, by the way, Numbers is a book of action, believe it or not. We're just not there yet.
That's 1,365 shekels.
That's right.
Yahweh's an accountant.
Yes, Yahweh's an accountant.
And a bookkeeper.
Yes.
He
yes.
keeps the books pretty good, so
Yes. Yep.
we better watch.
Yep, that's
What we
exactly
do.
right. Yeah,
It's
yeah. If
being
you ever
written.
this affects me a lot, because you realize how much tolerance God has for us,
Yeah.
who hardly ever get it right.
Yeah.
And he doesn't mess it up.
And I think there's several places where it talks about how not only is there books, but there's witnesses, heaven and earth,
Yeah,
2 big witnesses.
yeah,
Back in Genesis, where the blood was crying out.
well,
So
we're going to see
there's
it again in
yeah.
Deuteronomy. Yep.
So it's like, the saying, to be the fly on the wall to see the stuff. Well, Yahweh sees it.
Yep. Yeah, he
Yahweh
sees it.
sees it
That's
all,
good.
yeah.
That's a good point.
Sees
He
it, and
sees
it's recorded. And he sees the beginning from the end too, so
Yep.
it's everything.
Go ahead.
Oh, do you suppose when they redeemed 22,000 Israelites, they had to set aside 273 guys and say, okay, you need to wait till we collect this money?
I wouldn't doubt it.
And like, so they're kind of in limbo for the
Limbo
time
there
being,
for a
but
few minutes, yeah.
Do you think maybe they had to choose 273 guys? Or how?
I don't know. It certainly could be.
This is backing up a little.
That's
when
all
I
right.
look at your diagram up there, in Israel, they have a place set up, I don't remember exactly where it is, where the tabernacle, and it's supposed to be to size. And that white curtain, I mean, to me, there is no way there could have been that many people living inside that.
No, that's not, the white curtain is the outline on the gray box.
Yeah.
The outline on the gray box, nobody lives in there. I'm sorry, the gray box, nobody lives in.
Oh, not the gray box. I mean the dotted line, which
Yeah, but-
was the white curtain you said.
No.
Oh.
The dark black line around the gray box is the white curtain.
Oh, okay. So,
that-
really, that's where it started.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it amazes me how small it all was.
The tabernacle?
Yeah.
Yeah, it
even-
wasn't large and grandiose. no.
Even at Shiloh, where it was
Yeah.
set up for years, they have it all marked off. It's just amazing how.
I know that one you're
Weird.
talking about in Israel. I've been to it a couple of times out in the middle of the desert. And it's certainly manageable size. But it's not like the temple. The temple was much, much bigger. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, the one at Ariel, though, doesn't have the outer stuff. It just has the tabernacle itself, just the gray. Does it? I didn't think it did. Okay. I stand corrected. Okay. That's the end of chapter 3. We'll move on to chapter 4 if nobody has anything else. Like I say, by the time we're done with here, we'll get some action. Okay? Let's see. Would someone like to read the first 20 verses of chapter 4? You're probably tired of hearing me blab around. Yeah, go ahead. Let us give you a microphone. Just chapter 4, verses 1 through 20.
Duties of the Kohathites, Gershonites, and Merarites. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Take a census of the sons of Kohath from among the sons of Levi by their clans and their fathers' houses, from 30 years old up to 50 years old, all who come on duty to do the work in the tent of the meeting. This is the service of the sons of Kohath in the tent of meeting, the most holy things. When the camp is set out, Aaron and his sons shall go in and take down the veil of the screen and cover the ark of the testimony with it. Then they shall put on it a covering of goatskin and spread on top of that a cloth all of blue and shall put in its poles. And over the table of the bread of the presence they shall spread a cloth of blue and put on it the plates, the dishes for incense, the bowls, and the flagons for the drink offering. The regular showbread also shall be on it. Then they shall spread over them a cloth of scarlet, and cover the same with a covering of goatskin, and shall put in its poles. And they shall take a cloth of blue, and cover the lampstand for the light, with its lamps, its tongs, its trays, and all the vessels for oil with which it is supplied. And they shall put it with all its utensils in a covering of goatskin, and put it on the carrying frame. And over the golden altar they shall spread a cloth of blue, and cover it with a covering of goatskin, and shall put in its poles. And they shall take all the vessels of the service that are used in the sanctuary, and put them in a cloth of blue, and cover them with a covering of goatskin, and put them on the carrying frame. And they shall take away the ashes from the altar and spread a purple cloth over it. And they shall put on it all the utensils of the altar, which are used for the service there, the fire pans, the forks, the shovels, and the basins, all the utensils of the altar. And they shall spread on it a covering of goatskin, and shall put it in its poles. And when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the sanctuary and all the furnishings of the sanctuary, as the camp sets out, after that the sons of Kohath shall come to carry these, but they must not touch the holy things, lest they die. These are the things of the tent of meeting that the sons of Kohath are to carry. And Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, shall have charge of the oil for the light, the fragrant incense, the regular grain offering, and the anointing oil, with the oversight of the whole tabernacle and all that is in it, of the sanctuary and its vessels. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, let not the tribe of the clans of the Kohathites be destroyed from among the Levites, but deal thus with them, that they may live and not die when they come near the most holy things. Aaron and his sons shall go in and appoint them each to his task and to his burden, but they shall not go in to look on the holy things even for a moment, lest they die.
Okay, now this is kind of important because, I mean, again, you just have to be amazed at the detail that God goes through here. This is how the tabernacle is prepared for moving, which, whenever the cloud lifted off the tabernacle and moved away, they knew they were moving. So who went in and wrapped the stuff for movement? Aaron and his sons. Aaron and his sons. Now, they were Kohathites, but only Aaron and his sons. And toward the end of that passage, it says, nobody else could go in or they'll die. It's just Aaron and his sons. They go in and they cover everything up, just like it says here, with blue cloths and whatever. And then, after that, what happens? Yeah, Aaron and his sons tell other Kohath, you guys go in here. He didn't have to tell them anything. Basically, he says, okay, we're ready for you. And they all know which one is to carry what thing. And they go in and I'm sure they got at least 4, one on each corner of the ark. And, they got all these guys. They know exactly what their job is. They are Kohathites, but they aren't priests. And they can't go in while Aaron and his sons are covering all this stuff up. They can only go in after he's got everything all covered up. Mike?
Do you think there's something special about goatskin? Because, he's having them wrap everything up, and then the other guys can come in.
Yeah.
If they had not wrapped them up, then they would have died,
Yeah.
right? Because they would have touched certain things.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering.
I have no idea. It could be. This is consistent with the reason that Nadab and Abihu died, right? Because not only were they doing some weird thing, but they weren't responsible for doing this, and they just did that. Yes.
In my Bible, it says instead of goat skins, it has badger skins.
Well, yeah, mine says seal skins. So they didn't know what they really were whenever they translated this. So what does mine say? It says
Fine Corinthian leather.
sea cows, Corinthian leather.
That's funny. I was going to mention the same thing because I was really examining the words as we were reading along, and it was like goat skins. Mine says badger skins,
Yeah.
So I think probably the original Hebrew word probably meant something like animal skins.
Yeah.
And they interpret it different ways and obviously different translations. But also another word that I noticed was Kohenites, or Kohen. How do you pronounce that?
Kohathites.
Kohathites, which sounds a lot like Kohen.
Yeah.
And something we both heard, actually, was that people have done research, and they found that people with the last name Kohen, you guys were just speaking about that, and I just kind of like shut my mouth. I was like, I don't know what the truth is. But reading it here actually kind of gave me an understanding maybe that Kohenites are maybe Kohen.
Well,
And
it's okay.
possibility.
Now, you're on a good track, but let me tell you, and what I know, and it's consistent with what you're saying, the word Kohen in Hebrew means priest. Anytime you see the word priest here in English, it's come from the Hebrew word Kohen. Kohath was the name of Levi's second son. Levi's second son was named Kohath. And so all his descendants are called Kohathites. So Kohath and Aaron was a Kohathite. So Aaron the Kohen was a Kohathite. Yeah, there may be something to the fact that those sound a lot alike.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
All I know is that they were like, people with last name Cohen could be traced back to the tribe of Levi.
Yeah, that's why I say the name Kohen is very common these days, but a lot of people with the name Cohen aren't even Jewish.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so.
Be Levite.
Any questions about that? Yeah, John's got one. Of course.
It's something I hadn't seen before. And I was interested in all the cloths, and they go out of the way to mention the colors.
Yeah.
Like there's 7 times that mentions cloth, and blue is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Scarlet is 1, and purple is another.
Okay, now the red, the scarlet, that's what goes over the table of showbread, is it not?
Scarlet, and they should put upon the cloth to cover the same with the covering of badger skin. Should put it.
Yeah, verse 7, over the table of presence are spread a blue cloth.
Continual
put on the place.
bread. Yeah.
Okay.
The first one was.
Well, anyway, blue, red, and purple. Those are very good Israelite colors.
On the skins, it would make more sense that a clean animal was used, just from my personal opinion.
Well, certainly.
This is another example that we have many in Scripture where the firstborn son wasn't elevated to the high status. Gershon is the firstborn. He wasn't elevated to the priesthood. It was the Kohathite.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So and that happens many times throughout
Well,
Scripture.
as a matter of fact, if you look at it, it happens more often than not. Yeah. Yes.
Was it because when the Levites were chosen because of the, what was the cow thing?
The what?
The golden calf?
The golden calf incident, yeah.
But when Moses, it said he called his brothers, so it's possible that it was the Kohathites who were the first to respond to his call.
That's certainly a good point. That's a good point.
So it was blue, red, and purple. When you mix blue and red, you get purple, right?
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
Where did the dye come from for the blue and the red?
You knew where it comes from, the purple. I have no idea. I have no idea.
Well, the word for blue is techelet, and it is from they derive it from a certain seashell in the ocean. The red, the crimson, we discovered comes from another creature that's they find on the trees, and they crush it, and it makes this. It looks to me, it looks more of an orange, than it does
red.
What we would think red, but that's where they come from.
Yeah. Polly had something.
And we got to visit with a weaver that was weaving the curtain for the current temple. And interestingly, she shared with us how she was dyeing her blue yarn. And what she was gathering was a clear, almost yellowish substance. And when she put the wool in it and dried it, it wasn't until it dried in the sun that it turned blue.
Well, maybe that's
It was
interesting.
not blue, but it was almost a clear yellowish, and it didn't turn blue till it dried.
Huh. Interesting. Mike? Oh. It's a hard job, Mike.
I just have a little comment about blue.
Yeah.
So I heard that blue is actually, so, sorry, I do this when I start to talk.
That's all right.
I pause a little bit. Well, have you ever noticed, like, when the light shines in the window, you can see dust particles, right,
Uh-huh.
floating in the air? And what I heard about blue is that it's the only color that is not absorbed by the earth. It's God's color. And we are, you know, we're formed from the dust of the earth, and so everything that's left is blue.
Well, that's kind of nice, yeah. I remember the symbology of, let's see, red, of course, is blood, and blue is heaven, and purple is royalty.
Maybe that's why we have the blue in the seats. A thread of blue.
So, yeah, that fits with what you're saying. Moving right along, verse 21. Oh, did you have something, Margaret? Okay. Sorry about that. You're going to have to come with a pile of eggs so you can throw one at me.
I think blue too has come to be known as something very very high end blue chip stock.
Well, yeah.
Blue bloods.
Blue ribbon.
Blue ribbon.
Yeah, first place, all that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, second place is red, isn't it?
Yeah. How about that? Let me move on here. We're on verse 21. These are pretty boring. I'll read these. Starting in verse 21. Yahweh said to Moses, "Take a census also of the Gershonites by their families and clans. Count all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who come to serve at the work of tent of meeting. This is the service of the Gershonite clans as they carry their burdens. They are to carry the curtains of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, its covering, and the outer covering of the hides of sea cows, the curtains to the entrance, the curtains of the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle, an altar, the curtain for the entrance, the ropes, and all the equipment used in its service. The Gershonites are to do all that needs to be done with these things. All their service, whether carrying or doing other work, is to be done under the direction of Aaron and his sons. You shall assign to them their responsibility, all they are to carry. This is the service of the Gershonite clans at the tent of meeting. Their duties are to be under the direction of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest." Let me go on. Verse 29. Count the Merarites by their clans and families. Count all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who come to serve in the work at the tent of meeting. This is their duty as they perform the service at the tent of meeting, to carry the frames of the tabernacle, its crossbars, its posts, and its bases, as well as the posts of the surrounding courtyard with their bases, tent pegs, ropes, all their equipment, and everything related to their use. Assign to each man the specific things that he is to carry. This is the service of the Merarite clans as they work at the tent of meeting under the direction of Ithamar, the son of Aaron the priest. I'm going to go ahead and finish this section and we'll quit. Moses and Aaron and the leaders of the community counted the Kohathites by their clans and families, all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who came to serve in the work of the tent of meeting. Counted by their clans were 2,750. This was the total of all those of the Kohathite clans who served in the tent of meeting. Moses and Aaron counted them according to the Lord's command through Moses. The Gershonites were counted by their clans and families, all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who came to serve in the work of the tent of meeting. Counted by their clans and families were 2,630. This was the total of those in the Gershonite clans who served at the tent of meeting. Moses and Aaron counted them according to the Lord's command. And then the Merarites were counted by their clans and families, all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who came to serve in the work at the tent of meeting. Counted by their clans. There were 3,200. This was the total of those in the Merarite clans. Moses and Aaron counted them according to Yahweh's command through Moses. So Moses, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel counted all the Levites by their clans and families, all the men from 30 to 50 years of age who came to do the work of serving and carrying the tent of meeting, numbered 8,580. At the Lord's command, through Moses, each was assigned his work and told what to carry. Thus they were counted as Yahweh commanded Moses. Now that pretty much ends the number stuff for a while. But yeah, Claudette has something.
In here, it says it a couple of times in verse 35, from 30 years old and upward, even to 50 years old, everyone that enters the warfare for the service in the tent of meeting. And then down here, again, it says it, and it says it in verse 35, 39, 43, and 47. The word translated warfare, it's ISAVA, Isava,
Okay.
refers to military and warfare, but could be translated service. Here, Isava refers to spiritual warfare. The service in the sanctuary is not so arduous that it would call for retirement at 50 years old, but spiritual warfare could be the reason for early retirement. Being 30 to begin the warfare shows the need for maturity that this warfare service is to be taken seriously.
That's very interesting. I hadn't heard that before. Mine says work, but warfare makes sense, and I often wondered why the age 30 to 50, because that does seem rather small. But yeah, you definitely the 30 in terms of maturity. I mean, a lot of people say that that's part of the reason that Yeshua's ministry didn't start till he was 30, you know, because that's kind of God's age before you're mature enough to do this. That's very interesting. Let's see. Is there anything else to talk about in that? You have to be careful here. Some of these numbers don't look like they jive until you go back and look at who they're counting. Because in some places they were counting men from 20 on up, if they could find in an army. Sometimes they were counting males from, 2 months on up or whatever it was. And here they're counting men from 30 to 50. So what they're counting, you have to be careful of, because sometimes you'll say, well, I thought they counted that back there, and I do this. I thought they counted it back there and got a different number. What's going on here? And I've had to go through and realize sometimes they're counting different things. Only a guy like me would do that. Are there any other questions about this? So I know it feels like we've knocked this over and beat it to death, but you know, we start a new thing here next week, and it is more of an action kind of a deal. But I don't know. I found this fascinating. Maybe it's just because I'm, like I say, kind of a numbers kind of guy. Are there any other thoughts? Any other questions you want to ask? I like doing the question thing. John's got something. He's probably got an editorial comment.
So a little bit of a math. It was 273 times 5.
Yes.
So can you tell me quickly if that number is divisible by 3?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
2 plus 7 is 9, plus 3 is 12.
Which is divisible by
1
3.
plus 2 is 3, and so on.
Yeah.
And you had just a trivia geek question.
I like that. See, how geeky can we be?
But geeky.
Geeky, just geeky. All right, I'm ready to be done, unless you guys have any other comments or anything you want to talk about. Kenneth has something.
Just one final comment on the blue cord and the tzitzit.
Okay.
It's through the help of Mashiach that's intertwined through the tzitzit, which represents the commandments, right? And the
Yep.
mitzvot, right? So you can't do the commandments without having the help of the blue cord intertwined throughout it, which is Yahushua HaMashiach.
Very good point. That's a good point. I like that. So like I say, the thing about the commandments to me, and I keep saying it, but nobody really buys into it. It's a get to, not a have to. You know, you do this because you want to. You do this because it's an honor to try to, you know, to do what he wants us to do. But the Torah is amazing. Imagine sitting here reading a book demonstrably at least 2,500 years old, probably more like 4,000, and getting this kind of detail out of it. I just can't believe it. I'll close in prayer. Father God, thank you for the evening. Thank you again for your Torah. Thank you for the things that it can make us think about. I ask that you help us to think on these things as we go through the week. Just quicken our spirit that we might think about you and how you've done things, why you've done things, why you picked us, why you love us. Help us to be obedient and just keep us on the track that you want us to follow. In Yahushua's name, amen. Thanks very much, and I look forward to next week.